This is the entire 1990s NBA era and the insanity that defined it. The 1990s NBA was basketball's golden era, but also its most dangerous. From the Dream Team putting the entire world on notice, to the malice before the malice when a playoff brawl spilled into the stands in New York. The 1990s weren't just basketball's golden age. They were a decade where the NBA felt alive in a way we'll never see again. This was the era of Jordan's reign, Shaq's rise, and Reggie Miller talking trash like it was a weapon, where fights were real, the fashion was questionable, and the league became a global phenomenon, all while chaos brewed behind the scenes. Superstars were larger than life, rivalries were personal, and one wrong stare could start a feud that lasted years. And the only way to understand how wild it got is to live it all over again. This is the entire 1990s NBA explained. And trust me, it's not just nostalgia, it's pure insanity. The 80s NBA era didn't end in silence. It went out like a bar fight with the music still blasting. Magic's Lakers, Bird's Celtics, they'd been the faces of basketball for a decade. They were flashy, legendary, but ultimately, they were exhausted. But by 1990, that dynasty glow was cracking. The Pistons had shoved their way to the top, literally, with the bad boys turning basketball into a contact sport with hardwood instead of canvas. They had just broken the hearts of the Jordan-led Bulls in back-to-back Eastern Conference Finals, and they opened the new decade as defending champs.
Scottie Pippen up for a beautiful backdoor pass for Pippen, and he is walloped, and that will be a flip.
But this new decade, it wasn't just about who would win the chip, it was about chaos. The league was changing. Faster pace, newer stars, and tempers ready to boil over. We didn't even make it past the first half of the season before things got insane. In Portland, Houston guard Vernon Mad Max Maxwell heard one too many insults from a heckler sitting courtside, and instead of turning him out, Maxwell walked into the stands. Yeah, that happened. And of course, the image of an NBA player marching up the steps toward a fan in the middle of a game? Yeah, the league wasn't having it, so they slapped him with a 10-game suspension. This was 15 years before Malice at the Palace, and the league was already getting a taste of it. Meanwhile, in Philly, Charles Barkley was in peak "I'll do what I want" mode. He came into training camp overweight. So overweight that the Sixers fined him $5,000 per pound over his target weight. Barkley's response? "I've got the money, so I'll eat what I want." But while the Pistons were still busy hammering everyone, the next generation was taking shape. Rookie Tim Hardaway stepped into Madison Square Garden, hit Knicks defenders with the UTEP two-step crossover,
And Hardaway with a great step.
and you could almost hear the collective ankles snapping. Guards were getting flashier, quicker. This wasn't the 80s half-court grind anymore. In the 1990 season, the NBA also created the Trent Tucker rule, requiring at least 0.3 seconds on the clock for a catch and shoot, because of a controversial play in a 1990 game between the Knicks and the Bulls. In that game, with 0.1 seconds left, Trent Tucker caught the ball and made a game-winning shot.
For Ewing, Tucker swatches it. It's good! It's good!
You know who truly defined the 1990 season? A younger, faster, deadlier animal. Michael Jordan.
Pippen missing from long range. Jordan with a rebound, the basket, and draws the foul from Larry.
But if you want the moment that made it Jordan's year, that came in March. Bulls versus Cavs. Jordan drops 69 points and grabs 18 rebounds.
It's been unbelievable.
69 points for Michael Jordan.
Against the same Cavs team that had been his playoff victims in '89. The stat line looked like a video game. The message was even louder. The Bulls aren't just coming, we're inevitable. Out west, the Lakers were still breathing, but Magic was carrying over an aging roster. The Blazers were fast, the Suns were flashy, but the ring still went through Detroit. And that year's playoffs, the Pistons tore through Boston like they were nothing. They crushed the Knicks. Then came the Bulls-Pistons Part 3, the basketball equivalent of trench warfare. The entire series came down to a Game 7 in Detroit, and you already know they do not play fair. But in that game, Scottie Pippen woke up with a migraine so bad he could barely see. Jordan tries to do it all, but Detroit's defense is a steel cage. And just like that, the Pistons were back in the finals. They beat Portland for their second straight title. They were still kings, but this was their last summer in the sun. The Bulls were no longer learning. They were plotting. The dynasty handoff was coming, and it wouldn't be pretty.
Jordan lost. Vinny Johnson and Lambeer just fired at Jordan. Michael doesn't like.
Oh, and while all of that was going on, Magic Johnson and John Stockton were locked in a triple-double and assist title arms race. Stockton ended up winning the assists crown, but the way these two chased stats with surgical precision showed the quiet competitiveness behind all the Showtime smiles. 1990 wasn't just the dawn of a new decade. It was the year the NBA started to feel dangerous, unpredictable, and a little bit unhinged. The Pistons still had the crown, the Bulls had the best player alive, and the rest of the league, they were either bulking up to fight or crossing you over so bad you'd need an MRI. If 1990 was the warning shot, 1991 was the takeover. The bad boys still walked into the season as two-time champs, convinced the rest of the league would keep bowing. Detroit had the swagger, the bruises to prove it, and a psychological chokehold on the Bulls. From the jump, Chicago played like a team possessed. Phil Jackson's triangle offense was finally running on all cylinders. Scottie Pippen had blossomed into a legitimate top 10 player, putting up 17.8 points, 7.3 rebounds, and 6.2 assists a night, locking up the opposition's best wing every game. And Jordan was Jordan, not just the scoring champion. 31.5 points per game on an absurd 53.9% shooting, unheard of for a god at the time. That year, he was an all-star, first-team All-NBA, first-team All-Defense, and for the second time in his career, League MVP. This was a Jordan who could drop 40 one night and hold your star to 12 the next, all while plotting Chicago to a franchise record 61 wins. The Pistons still got their licks in during the regular season. Still hard fouls, still stare downs, but by the time the Eastern Conference Finals rolled around, something felt different. The Bulls didn't just beat the Pistons, they swept them. 4 straight. And when the final buzzer sounded in Game 4, the bad boys didn't even shake hands. They just walked off. Right past Chicago's bench, no congratulations, no acknowledgement, just pure spite. And Jordan kept receipts of Isaiah Thomas's hate.
Around by Vlade Divac.
I think that Magic Johnson really got him fired up about it and really did.
And would take revenge later. It was petty, it was iconic, and it was the last time Detroit would matter in the 90s title race. Now the final stage was set. Bulls versus Lakers. The Air versus Magic show. The king of the 80s versus the man who would own the 90s. Game 1 went to the Lakers. For a second, it felt like Showtime might have one last miracle in them. But Jordan responded by unleashing the mid-air switch in Game 2. That floating, inhuman layup where he switched hands mid-flight. It was more than a bucket, it was a torch being passed. Chicago took the next 4 games.
Jordan. Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan.
Jordan finally had his ring. Finals MVP, and a smile so wide it almost looked foreign on his face. The dynasty clock had started. But 1991 wasn't just the birth of the Bulls' run. It was also the end of something bigger. Magic Johnson, the face of NBA for a decade, shocked the world in November. He announced that he had contracted HIV and was retiring immediately.
I will have to retire from the Lakers.
In his honor, Barkley switched to his number for the rest of the season. The press conference was emotional, surreal, and it marked the first time the NBA had to confront a health crisis on that scale. The NBA rolled into 1992 riding the high of Chicago's first championship, but also facing a gut punch of Magic's announcement. It shook the entire sports world. Magic was still in his prime, still an all-star. and suddenly he was gone from the game. Meanwhile, the Bulls didn't just sit on their throne, they came back sharper. Jordan averaged 30.1 points, 6.4 rebounds, and 6.1 assists, snagged his second straight MVP, and Scottie Pippen was now one of the league's most complete players. Chicago stormed to 67 wins, but their biggest challenger wasn't the Pistons anymore. It was a team from the Pacific Northwest, the Portland Trail Blazers. Led by Clyde the Glide Drexler, Portland had the best record in the West and a chip on their shoulder. All year, the narrative swirled. Was Clyde catching up to Michael? They said he had something Michael didn't: threes. The media loved it, and Jordan, well, he kept receipts. The finals were set: Bulls versus Blazers, and Game 1 became the Shrug game. Jordan dropped 6 threes in the first half, more than anyone thought he even had in his arsenal. Then famously turned to the scorer's table where Magic Johnson sat and shrugged like, I don't even know how I'm doing this. In the first half alone, he scored 35 points, which is still, to date, the most of anyone in a finals half. Chicago won the series in 6.
Here's Jordan for 3. Yes! Did you see that one? Michael indicating he can't.
Cementing back-to-back titles. But 1992 wasn't done delivering moments. That summer, for the first time ever, NBA players were allowed in the Olympics. And the result was the most stacked roster in basketball history, the Dream Team. Jordan, Magic, Bird, Pippen, Barkley, Malone, Stockton, and Clyde Drexler, finally sharing the court with the man who'd just beaten him for a ring. They destroyed every opponent in sight, winning by an average of 44 points per game, and turned basketball into a true global sport. But the summer also carried its share of tension. Isaiah Thomas, still at odds with Jordan after years of bad blood, was left off the roster entirely. Officially, it was about fit. Unofficially, well, everyone knew it was Michael's revenge. By the time the 1992-93 season tipped off, the Chicago Bulls weren't just champions, they were becoming more. Back-to-back titles, the best player in the world, the aura of invincibility. But behind the curtain, there was something else creeping in: fatigue. Michael Jordan had played 3 straight seasons of 100+ games, including playoffs and summers with Team USA. The media wanted every quote, every game felt like a must-win, and every opponent played Chicago like it was their personal finals. The pressure was suffocating, and it would only grow heavier. The season itself was still dominant. 57 wins, Jordan averaging 32.6 points per game. But the real highlight was Charles Barkley, now with the Phoenix Suns, winning the MVP over MJ. Barkley and Phoenix felt like a fresh, hungry challenger. They led the league with 62 wins and had a deep roster. Kevin Johnson running the floor, Dan Marley bombing threes, and Barkley bulldozing everything in his path. The finals matchup was pure gold: Barkley versus Jordan. And Game 4 gave us one of the greatest sequences in finals history: the triple overtime war in Phoenix. Jordan played 55 minutes and dropped 44 points. Barkley had 32. But it was Chicago that stole the game and took a 3-1 lead. By Game 6, Paxton's clutch 3 sealed the three-peat. Jordan was now in a tier only the Celtics and Lakers dynasties had reached. 3 titles in a row. The greatest run of the modern era. Right then, the bottom fell out. Just weeks after the championship parade, Jordan's father, James Jordan Sr., was murdered in North Carolina during a roadside robbery. The loss devastated him, and the whisper started: was Jordan's obsession with gambling connected to it? The media didn't hold back, and the speculation grew ugly.
Larry Demery and Daniel Green also faced charges of armed robbery.
On October 6, 1993, just before training camp, Michael Jordan shocked the world. He walked into the press conference and announced he was retiring from basketball at 30 years old, in his prime. But then it got even stranger. A few months later, Jordan signed with the Chicago White Sox organization to play baseball. The best basketball player on earth traded in his sneakers for spikes. The league felt different instantly. Without MJ, every contender sensed opportunity. The Knicks, Rockets, and Suns all knew the door to the championship was finally open. 1993 wasn't just the end of a season, it was the end of an era. The most dominant run of the decade stopped cold, and no one knew if we'd ever see Michael Jordan in the NBA again. When the 1993-94 season tipped off, it felt like the NBA had been unplugged and rebooted. It was the year Shaquille O'Neal was drafted, and for the first time in a decade, the season didn't have a clear final boss. The power vacuum was real, and every contender smelled blood. The New York Knicks were suddenly the team to beat in the East. Pat Riley had them playing trench warfare basketball, Charles Oakley setting bone-rattling screens, John Starks ready to fight anyone, and Patrick Ewing carrying the scoring load. Out west, Hakeem Olajuwon was about to have one of the most underrated MVP seasons ever. 27.3 points, 11.9 rebounds, 3.7 blocks per game, and finally, the Defensive Player of the Year trophy in the same season and becoming the first to do it since Jordan. The man was a one-man fortress. The finals gave us Knicks versus Rockets, a 7-game war so physical that one game was literally interrupted by O.J. Simpson's police chase being broadcast mid-broadcast. Hakeem's block on Starks in Game 6 saved the Rockets, and in Game 7, they finished the job, giving Houston its first championship. But in 1994-95, the East's new order started wobbling. Scottie Pippen carried the Jordanless Bulls to 55 wins in '94, but now he was openly feuding with management. Remember that infamous playoff moment against the Knicks where Pippen refused to check back in because the final play wasn't drawn up for him? Yeah, the cracks were showing. Luckily, Tony Kukoc, whom the play was made for, ended up winning the game. Meanwhile, down in Orlando, a 22-year-old Shaquille O'Neal was turning into the most unstoppable force in the paint since Wilt, even forcing the league to change the entire hoop for him because of the 2 incidents of him bringing the entire thing down. Also, he had Penny Hardaway, 6'7", smooth, electric running point. The Magic had style, size, and swagger. Then, in March 1995, everything changed. 2 words: I'm back. After 21 months away, Michael Jordan returned to the NBA. No warm-up season, no easing in. He showed up mid-March wearing number 45 and immediately had the league buzzing. He even dropped 55 points on the Knicks at Madison Square Garden like he'd never left. But the playoff rust was real. In the second round, Orlando caught him slipping. Literally. Nick Anderson stripped the ball from Jordan in Game 1.
10 seconds to play. And Jordan spinning his way against Anderson.
And the Magic went on to win the series in 6. And just to twist the knife, Anderson said after the game, "Number 45 doesn't explode like number 23 used to." As always, Jordan took that personally. The Rockets, meanwhile, were barely a 6th seed, but they pulled off one of the most savage playoff runs ever. They beat the 60-win Jazz, then the MVP David Robinson, and the Spurs. Hakeem destroyed him in that series, and then swept the Magic in the finals. 2 years, 2 titles. The Hakeem era was stamped forever. But deep down, everyone knew the man who owned the 90s was back, and he'd have the whole summer to sharpen his teeth for revenge. 1995 was Jordan shaking off the cobwebs, but 1996 was him walking into the league like he owned the damn place again, because he did. Jordan ditched the 45. Number 23 was back, and so was that cold-blooded edge. The Bulls reloaded with a big off-season move, trading for Dennis Rodman, the league's most infamous rebounding machine. Sure, Rodman was a walking controversy, but the man could grab 20 rebounds in his sleep. With Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman, plus Steve Kerr sniping from deep and Tony Kukoc as the perfect Swiss Army knife, Phil Jackson had an actual super team before super teams were a thing. The result? 72 wins. Still the gold standard for dominance until the Warriors broke it in 2016. Jordan won MVP, All-Star MVP and Finals MVP in the same season, the only player to ever do it twice. The finals weren't even close. Bulls versus Sonics. Gray Payton trying to talk his way into MJ's head. Bad idea. Jordan clinched the title on Father's Day, sobbing on the locker room floor with the game ball in his hands. His first championship since his dad's murder. It wasn't a comeback, it was a coronation. By '97, the Bulls were so dominant it felt like they were playing a different sport. They finished 69-13 because apparently 72 wins wasn't enough. Jordan was 34, still leading the league in scoring. Pippen was the ultimate two-way threat. Rodman still pulling 16 rebounds a game like a man possessed. But there was drama bubbling under the surface, mostly about money. Pippen was furious about his contract. Rodman kept disappearing for WWE events. Phil Jackson's Last Dance whispers were already starting. Still, when the playoffs came, they locked in. The big new challenger? Karl Malone and John Stockton's Utah Jazz. The pick and roll was unstoppable, and Malone was named MVP, which Jordan took personally. The finals were tight. The Jazz already tied it 2-2, but Game 5 gave us the legend of the flu game. Jordan was dragging himself onto the court with a 103-degree fever, sweating bullets and still dropping 38 points in a crucial win. Game 6, Jordan iced it with a dagger jumper, clinching his 5th title. In '98, you could feel it. This wasn't just another Bulls season, it was the season. Jerry Krause, the Bulls GM, had already made it public. Phil Jackson was done after the year. And if Phil was out, Jordan was out. Pippen was still salty over his contract and missed the first 2 months after delaying surgery out of spite. Rodman was being Rodman, wrestling with Hulk Hogan mid-season. But when they were on the court, still lethal. They went 62-20 and Jordan, at 35, won his 10th scoring title. Playoffs? Business as usual until the finals, when they ran it back against Karl Malone, John Stockton, and the Utah Jazz. It all built up to that moment. Game 6, Utah up 86-83 with 41 seconds left. Jordan hits a quick layup, steals the ball from Malone, brings it up, pushes off Brian Russell. Yeah, we all saw it. Drains the jumper. 87-86. Title number 6, series over. It was the perfect send-off, but also a breakup. Jordan retired again, Phil left, Rodman was gone, and the Bulls went from dynasty to lottery team overnight. 1999 was a weird indie film no one really understood. Owners and players were locked in a brutal labor dispute, mostly over salary caps and rookie pay. The result, the season didn't start until February. Only 50 games, no All-Star weekend. Everyone came in out of shape. Scoring dropped league-wide. The Bulls, a shell of their former selves, finishing 13-37. But the chaos gave us one of the most surprising final runs ever. The 8th seed New York Knicks, Latrell Sprewell, Allen Houston, and Patrick Ewing rode a Cinderella run to the finals, where they got smacked by the San Antonio Spurs. That was the birth of the Spurs dynasty. Tim Duncan and David Robinson, the Twin Towers dominating inside. Duncan won Finals MVP, the first of many.
Finals, Tim Duncan.
It was a short, messy season, but it planted seeds for the 2000s power shift. By the time the 90s wrapped, the league was in flux. Jordan was gone, the Bulls dynasty was dead, the '99 lockout season had left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. But quietly, the next chapter was already being written. In 1996, the Lakers pulled off 2 moves that would shape the next decade. Trading for a skinny 17-year-old kid out of Lower Merion High named Kobe Bryant,
Has to put it up with the buzzer. Banks it in! He banks it!
and signing the most dominant force in basketball, Shaquille O'Neal. At first, it was just raw talent and flashes of brilliance. Kobe bricking air balls in the playoffs, Shaq racking up monster dunks with no rings. But by the turn of the millennium, the duo was about to ignite a dynasty. The 90s ended not with a coronation, but with a question. Who would own the 2000s, now that Jordan's throne was empty? And that was the NBA's wild ride through the 1990s, an era of super teams, iconic rivalries, and the greatest player to ever lace them up. If you've been enjoying this deep dive, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next, because this story isn't over. The throne Jordan left behind didn't stay empty for long. Click right here to watch the next chapter, the rise of Kobe Bryant and the Lakers dynasty. It's showing on your screen right now.